A reading from Mark chapter 4. When evening had come, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let us go across to the other side." And leaving the crowd behind, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was. Other boats were there with him. A great gale arose, and the waves beat into the boat, so that the boat was already being swamped. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. And they woke him up and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" He woke up and rebuked the wind, and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." Then the wind ceased, and there was a dead calm. He said to them, "Why are you afraid? Have you still no faith?" And they were filled with great awe, and said to one another, "Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?"
It's simply not true that being a Christian means smooth sailing. A Christian life does not prevent life's storms. But having Jesus in our boat can give us some peace, a peace the world cannot give. Today we've heard the famous passage of Jesus calming the storm. And before he does that, he's asleep. St. Augustine's interpretation of today's Gospel passage is that the sleeping Christ stands for the power of God. The power of God that's in us, yes, but that we have allowed to fall asleep. It's telling, isn't it? There is this Christ living in us, but that we have allowed him to go to sleep because we are focusing on the storm. We can live in that worried, chaotic world of the disciples in the storm, crying out in our anxiety. Or we can try to live in the space of the sleeping Christ. I wonder, what's your attitude? What's your orientation? Again, none of this means storms won't come, but we can find harbour in the midst of them. There's a related story in the Gospel of Matthew when Peter is able to walk on water, as long as he's looking at Jesus. Interestingly, it's when Peter looks at the wind that he begins to sink. When Jesus is woken, what do we hear him say? He says to the sea, "Quiet, be still." Here is the power of Jesus Christ on display. Of course, it is right that we live our lives with great enthusiasm, but not without depth. What this can lead to is the kind of fearful paralysis that we see on display in the disciples. It's why we flail about when the storms come. But Christ, once he's awakened in us, does have the power to calm the storms that rage around us. Is there anyone listening who, by focusing on the perils of the storm, has slumbered into an indifference to the things of the Spirit? If so, I ask you to remember that you are in the boat of the community of St. John's, and together we can wake up the Christ in our boat. As the storm rages, let's look to that peaceful sleeping Christ together and trust him to give us his peace. Amen.